Hey everybody, what's going on? Hellmite here, bringing you another video from Grab the Lantern today. Today I wanted to go ahead and talk about Nexus Blitz now that the event is over, and kind of give my sort of review on where the game mode ended up. Now, if you guys weren't around for the last time Nexus Blitz was on, right, we're initially billing Nexus Blitz as a potential permanent game mode, ideally something to replace Twisted Treeline, as we all knew that that was going to be on its way out back when Nexus Blitz first showed up. Now, Riot did essentially say, well, we know we're not really going to do this, and it didn't get the engagement we wanted, so we are going to remove it, and then eventually that led to the removal of Twisted Treeline as well, and left us with absolutely no alternate game modes for the game outside of ARAM or Summoner's Rift, right? Those are your only two options. But since then, Nexus Blitz had a tremendous amount of community support, and eventually they decided, hey, let's go ahead and try to bring this game mode back and see if we can't make some improvements and see if there's something else we can't do for it. And now they timed it very well. I do think the Spirit Bonds event was a great opportunity to bring back this map, and especially to give it some more polish. Now, I do think that this is a really good idea for Riot to say, hey, community, we know you guys want Nexus Blitz, so we're willing to give it another shot, and to then put in time and energy into developing a new map, into developing assets for this, to try and make it as good as possible, to see if that would have an effect on potentially how many people decided they wanted to play it. So let's go ahead and talk about the review itself. First of all, the good. The new map is awesome. I am a big fan of the Temple of the Lotus and the Lily, or whatever it's called. I think that's correct, but you guys will have to let me know that down in the comment section below if I do have that wrong. But either way, I absolutely love the map. I think it looks amazing. I'm a big fan of just the Ionia aesthetic, and especially anytime Riot can inject things that we are aware of that exist in Runeterra into the game, that's really cool. Don't get me wrong, Summoner's Rift, I think, is an iconic map and it's been around forever, but it does lose something when it's just sort of a place in Runeterra somewhere we're not really sure, and there's nothing to even really indicate, you know, any of the other aspects of Runeterra as a world. Whereas Temple of the Lily and the Lotus feels like a place you could go visit in Ionia, and that's partially why I did enjoy Twisted Treeline and why I enjoyed Crystal Scar even when that was around, is because those maps felt like they belonged in the world. They felt like a place you could go visit, whereas Summoner's Rift doesn't really feel like that. So I'm a big fan of Temple of the Lily and the Lotus. I love how all of the assets were sort of reskinned in order to make it work for the event, or for the map. The meta felt very flexible for me, at the very least, in Nexus Blitz. Now, I probably played it less than some other people. I'm sure there are people who did nothing but play Nexus Blitz since it came out. But it did feel like there were a lot of things that were playable. Now, certain champions were sort of like, yeah, you probably don't want to bring this out because it's just not going to do enough. I can specifically think of stuff like Karthus or Yuumi. Yuumi, because if you get something like Prize Fight, well, what does that champion even remotely do? Whereas Karthus, you're just not ever going to be able to scale fast enough. Your ultimate is on too low of a cooldown for you to really cast all that much unless you can get on fire. That sort of a thing, but by and large, you could pretty much play whatever you wanted in Nexus Blitz, including in the jungle, which I really did like. The jungle pool was significantly higher because it's this double jungle category, which means that you didn't really have to worry about a spot where you're like, oh, well, I got jungle, so that means the champion I want to play I can't really bring out. You can kind of say, yeah, sure, I'm in the jungle. I'm going to play Yuumi. I'm going to play Morgana. I'll play whatever I want because I have this partner to help me continue to jungle, and that makes all the difference in the world. So, honestly, a big fan of how that ended up playing out, and a big fan of just being able to bring out whatever I wanted, because that was one of the biggest draws of Nexus Blitz in the first place, is it's a for-fun game mode like ARAM, but you get to pick your champion, and that, I think, was a huge deal, because especially there were no meta implications. You could kind of play whatever you decided you wanted to. The organized events in Nexus Blitz, so Earth Deathmatch, Prize Fight, even something like Battle Royale, they felt less common than the unorganized events, which maybe that's a disadvantage. I do quite like Prize Fight as an event, but I do like that because they were so uncommon, it kind of felt like the game was always moving to a close because the clock didn't really stop, more or less. You were still playing the game, you could still farm it up. If there were weird oddities going on, you didn't really have to worry so much about, you know, necessarily what was going on. You could keep on farming if you wanted to. So I do really like how that kind of worked out and how those events seemed less common. I don't know if that was an intentional change on Riot's part, but I enjoyed it. And in general, I felt like the individual champion and item balance felt fine. Like I said, there didn't seem like there were any champions that were particularly big deals that you like absolutely had to ban, or otherwise they would be ridiculous. Items in general as well. I know The game mode has a lot of really wonky items, especially some older ones like Innervating Locket, but again, it didn't really feel like there were any situations where someone could make a build where they're just invincible, and I think it's partially due to how fast that game mode is. I also enjoyed how they made the Nexus Blitz part of Nexus Blitz happen earlier in the game. I believe when it first came out, the Blitz started at around 18 minutes to 20 minutes, if I'm not mistaken, which meant that you could get games over 20 minutes, unfortunately, because if the Blitz went long and things were kind of grinding out, well, maybe you were a couple minutes late to whatever it is you had to do after the game. Whereas in the new iteration, I felt like Blitz started soon enough in the game that it was guaranteed going to be done by 20 minutes, which is really nice, and I do enjoy how quick those games could go. That's all the good. Now let's talk a little bit about the bad and where Riot may want to think about improving if they decide to bring Nexus Blitz back again, which is something that they have said they are open to in the future. First off, the catch-up mechanics are very unclear still. Sometimes you could be down a tremendous amount. The kill score could be something like 17 to 21 or something ridiculous like that, but the King of the Hill Zone would still spawn in the enemy jungle, and you just kind of say, well, we lost all the other events, but we're guaranteed to lose this one as well because we cannot possibly compete with that. Or you could be extremely ahead, and the King of the Hill Zone still spawns under your tower, and you're like, oh, so it's an auto win for us. There's nothing they can do about it. Part of the problem with this as well is because the enemy Guardian could be incredibly powerful, and I'm not really a fan of the Guardian in general. I do think from a thematic perspective, the Guardian was a lot cooler than the tower that initially existed in the jungle in Nexus Blitz, but the problem with it is that it essentially prevented fighting in the enemy jungle at all, because it would come find you and it would beat you up and it would do a ton of damage, ton of disruption, and just have so much health that you couldn't even really burn it down. You'd have to spend a significant amount of time trying to kill it before before a fight happened, and you didn't know where the zone was going to spawn in the first place. You don't know where the loot minion is going to walk, so it didn't feel like there was any real reason to ever remotely try. So he was too strong. The tower in the other iteration felt significantly better to play around because it was sort of like you had a safe place to go if the enemy team were trying to chase you down or if the enemy team were competing for a specific zone. Like, that's fine. I'm fine with having a safety space I can go to be protected, but the Guardian being able to sort of seek and destroy enemies was a little bit too much in my opinion. Now, rewards also didn't feel quite appropriate to me. You could win a really tough event or win when you were behind somehow against all odds, but then you could get a useless upgrade like Static Shock or Blessings of Blitzcrank. So that always feels bad when you pull out all the stops, you get the event win from behind, and you got a useless ability. Whereas the enemy team, for example, who could be ahead all game, finally win, you cheese out the first two, they win one, and all of a sudden they get Elder Dragon. And you just kind of lose the game off of that because you can't compete with the Elder Dragon. So I'm not a fan of how that works. I would like it significantly more if the team that was ahead got the weaker bonuses when they won. So if the kill score is something like, 4 to 22 or something like that, that if the team that's behind wins, that they get something like Elder Dragon in order to try and buff them up and get them into a better spot. Whereas if the team that is ahead would get something like Blessings of Blitzcrank, which is mostly irrelevant in all stages of the game, but like you still won the event, you still probably got a bunch of kills, and you did get an upgrade. Regardless of if it's a valuable upgrade or not, you still got it and the enemy team didn't. I feel like that would be a more fair way to do it. It might also be interesting if each event said what was at stake prior to starting, so teams could decide if they want to even remotely compete. So for example, hear me out here, if you have the loot minion, for example. So loot Teemo spawns, and both teams are notified the reward for winning the loot Teemo event is going to be Static Shock. Well, the team that's behind isn't even going to try, right? They might try to snipe the Teemo for a little bit of gold here or there, but there's no way they're going to go for it, hard, full out, because they just know it's not worth giving up so many kills trying to go for the event. Whereas the team that's ahead may say, yeah, we'll pick that one up because why not? Now, that might lead to overall less engagement in the event, which might not be something that Riot wants to do, but I think it would be interesting to play around with at the very least. Overall, I still feel like Nexus Blitz was significantly more polished than it was before. It felt a lot more like a permanent game mode, which is what you really want to see out of it. I still think it might become permanent at the end of the day because it has a unique map, but you can't say that for sure because of how Riot's treated Butcher's Bridge, if you guys remember that. That's a map that exists that they put a lot of polish into, they put a lot of time into, and it's come back once since it initially debuted in the Burning Tides event. So just having a permanent map, a really pretty map, doesn't guarantee a game mode is going to return, but it does feel like, at the very least, Riot want it to be coming back more often than it currently is, which I am a big fan of. I would love to see some continued polish, especially in regards to the events and the catch-up mechanics of the game mode. That would be a big help, I think, for me, and I would love to see that happen, but we'll have to see if Riot want to continue sinking dev time into the game mode. Anyways, that's going to be it for me today, guys. Thank you all so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. Let me know your thoughts on Nexus Blitz down in the comments. I would love to hear, especially if you guys had other things that you really disliked about Nexus Blitz. If you guys have things that you really hate about Nexus Blitz, I would love to hear all of that down in the comments. Let me go ahead and know about that. If you enjoyed today's video, go ahead and leave a like. And if you really enjoyed today's video, consider subscribing. I upload a video every Monday, Friday, and on patch days as well. Once again, thank you guys so very much for watching. I do appreciate it. And I'll talk to you all later.